Hello everyone, welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. I'm sounding a bit too chipper there actually, aren't I, after such a miserable weekend. Listen, I've made a habit now of doing these awkward stumbling intros, saying I'm not going to do them but doing one anyway. This isn't some sort of bit. I'm not trying to be like funny with this. I am genuinely just stumbling over myself, so please forgive me. Hello, Lara. Welcome to the pod. Please save me, mate. How are you doing?
Depressed.
Was that just from my intro or the game? Yeah.
All of it, really. All of it. It's not. There's not much joy out there at the moment, is there?
It's not, and I think this is all very befitting of it, right? Tottenham Hotspur. It's just everything is all over the place.
Yeah.
Let's start because there's a lot, right? There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of different kind of forks in this road. But let's start on the game itself. I personally would say it has been a very long time, probably about 9 years, in fact, ironically enough, that I've seen us play that badly against them at home.
Yeah.
Other than for a couple of short little spells, it was pretty disgraceful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it felt like a complete role reversal of last year, basically. Like, you look at that game last year, it was men versus boys. We were the men, they were the boys. This time, very much the other way round. I mean, I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't really watched much of the Scum this year because I feel like I curse it every time I turn it on. They seem to score, and yeah, let's be honest, I don't really enjoy watching them play well. So I'll be brutally honest in that I've sort of known they've been winning, but not really been paying that much attention. But they were actually quite good, and we just didn't turn up again, you know.
Well, this is the thing, is it? Because I'm not turning this into one of those kind of like culture wars between eye test people and stats people, but the stats did show that it was a pretty evenly matched game, but it was anything but that. Like you say, they seemed to be the more mature. They completely dominated pretty much every area of the pitch. We couldn't get started. Like I say, other than probably a brief spell, maybe when we got our tails up for 10-15 minutes in the second half, I reckon. They just looked so controlled, so above it, and I don't know what's happened from last year. Fair enough, okay, there was a lot of pressure on them, but still, they look so much better than they did last year already. The way they were knocking the ball about, their kind of composure on the ball, especially in midfield, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's quite, obviously, given the chaps off field shenanigans, shall we say, to put it lightly, it's horrible seeing Thomas Partey being the absolute star of the show for them as well. It just really rubs it in.
Yeah, exactly. Something just seems to have clicked for them. I mean, I know they've made a couple of signings, but like you say, end of last year, it was a completely different story. They didn't look anywhere near this, and we were flying, and it just doesn't make sense to me that. It's that is the same team we had last year. We've made signings, not, let's be honest, loads of brilliant ones, but there isn't really. You look at it, there isn't a clear reason why suddenly there should be such a stark difference the other way between the teams.
Do you think at all, because like touching on that, a lot of people are talking about like Conte. They're talking about a guy who isn't showing commitment to the club. We can talk about how much he's been backed or not, and there's a lot of debate around that. But sort of, if we're looking at it from his perspective, we're looking at a guy that he hasn't really. Whenever he talks about us, right? I can't remember who it was. It was one of the pods was saying he talks like he's a consultant. He's always talking about Tottenham, what Tottenham need and what the club need to do. It's never a kind of a, we as us, whatever type scenario like we've had in the past. I think we all remember Harry Redknapp back in the day. It was always them when we weren't playing well and us when we got a good result. It's how it wasn't. It doesn't even feel like we get the us with Conte at any point. It looks like his contract's up. I think I don't know how the legality works around this extension, if it's an obligation, or if he doesn't want to extend, he doesn't have to. So as far as things sort of look at the moment, it looks like we've got a guy who doesn't particularly like the club, doesn't particularly like the players he's got. And so it does beg the question, why are they going to go above and beyond for him? I mean, do you think there's anything... Because that's kind of how I feel, but I don't know if you feel there's anything in that, if that's just my bias against Conte that comes out.
I mean, I was buzzing when we got him. You know, he is one of those world-class managers who won something everywhere he's been. And, yeah, we know his football isn't the most attractive, but, you know, it normally gets results. So, you know, obviously I've kind of given him the benefit of the doubt from the start, but I'm coming towards that same conclusion of, like you say, he's not committing. So, and at the same time, Antonio, if you are a world-class coach, why aren't you where is the evidence that you are coaching those players to be better? I get the thing of giving somebody time and that, you know, it takes time to implement the system or whatever, but this seems to be going backwards, not forwards. You're not even seeing glimpses of like, oh, I see where he's trying to go here. And then you've got odd things happening, like the Jed Spence thing. I don't understand. Like, who was behind that signing? Because clearly Conte doesn't want him. He's not playing him. You can't argue that he could... There's no way he can't bring something to the team that Emerson Royal isn't bringing to the team. Like,
he's sort of got egg on his face with that a bit, because he's only playing Sarr because of... He's been forced to, basically. And Sarr was, if we're talking about that game, I would say he was probably the only bright light of hope. Probably Kulusevski as well, so I don't want to take him for granted. But Sarr's performance, I thought, given it was his first start, North London derby, against a pretty fiery midfield in Partey, Xhaka and Odegaard, he held his own. He did a good job. But would we have seen him at all were it not for injuries? So, like you say, this hesitancy with Conte to play any of these young players at his disposal, he just seems to be undoing kind of anything that is good about what he has brought to the club. And I'm not saying he's brought nothing to the club. I do think he's instilled a certain winning mentality, right? But...
You know, Bentancur and Kulusevski, obviously, they are fantastic signings. They've been brilliant. But it's the same thing with, like, the Spence thing for me is that it's begging the question of who is making those signings. Because if he didn't want them, why is he here? Who was behind pushing to get that signing over the line if Conte was not the one saying, I want that player? I don't understand what's happening there.
If it's somewhere between Paratici or if it's just Levy, or because we know that in the past Levy's, you know, I think he's headed up signing players like Modric, I believe, like Dele Alli and stuff. He's really been proactive in kind of getting those sort of deals done. And I don't know, it's maybe... I mean, we'll talk about Daniel Levy, talk about that a bit later. And I do want to sort of expand on Conte, I guess, a bit more. But I'll save that for a moment. I just want to sort of focus again sort of on the game. And I think the thing that I found... Because like you say, you're depressed. And... I feel in a real funk, but, you know, for the first time, I don't feel like, I didn't feel angry at Arsenal. I didn't have that sort of hatred for Arsenal. I didn't have that visceral, and it pains me. It makes me feel sick to feel this way. There's that part of me watching them do what they did to us, watching kind of what they're doing right now. I can't help but think, fair enough. You know, like, and it like, I don't want them to do it. I'm not in any way celebrating that, but I cannot help but think, like, fair enough. They are such, just, it's horrible seeing Tottenham now for the past few years having, like, built such an identity under Pochettino, have that kind of go to shit, obviously, whatever the stadium or people just kind of running out of love for the project, not bringing in enough kind of fresh legs, that type of thing, to have gone from that to Mourinho, Nuno, and now Conte. And I was saying on Twitter the other day, it feels like we've watched the same football match for like the past 3 or 4 years now, right?
Yeah.
Which
dull.
It's dull. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And
and even when you win, most of the time we've won, and you think, well, we didn't play very well, but we got the result. It's not that kind of, very rarely come away thinking we absolutely smashed that.
No. And seeing even our 4-0 against Crystal Palace, I didn't think, we smashed them 4-0, you know?
Yeah.
It sort of fell into our lap because Harry Kane was like, all right, fucking hell, I'll take this on again. And sort of just turned into beast mode Harry Kane again and got it done. But seeing like them kind of really with this real clear identity now. This sort of, you know, what are they like? Progressive, young, smart signings, making kind of, you know, identifying weaknesses in their squad and addressing them quickly and effectively. Kind of, it's just so painful to see us continue to, like, whatever. I think he's a good player, but seeing us linked to someone like Trossard this window, do we need, like, what? Do we need him, or is it just because he's fallen out with Brighton, he's a decent enough player, so he might be signable? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there doesn't seem to be you know, we know we've got these weaknesses we need to address. It's like Liverpool did with you know, Alisson and I was going to say Van der Vaart. That's the wrong one.
Yeah.
Van Dijk, too many Vans. Yeah, they, you know, they went out and saw what was, you know, we were really kind of neck and neck with them. They were worse than us for a long time. That was their weakness. They made that priority. They went out, they signed the right players, and look what happened. And we've been in that position so many times where it's just been that one signing away or just that two signings away, and we just don't seem to be decisive in that moment and go out and get that player. We faff about, get somebody they didn't quite want who then doesn't play, and then we just don't quite get over the line. And now we're back in that kind of, we're on the downward cycle. I mean, look at Liverpool now. They're on that, you know, football is cyclical. So this is part of that. You know, we peaked under Poch. We're now in the downward bit. Same thing's happening to Liverpool under Klopp at the moment, but the difference is they went balls out when it mattered, and they actually got something to show for it.
They won the lot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so fun, isn't it? Because you see all over on Twitter now, people sort of doing this whole, like, you know, it makes me uncomfortable to say this, but this FSG, I think somebody called it like a reign of terror, this Liverpool fan, and saying like Klopp's proving that he's just a yes man. And I'm thinking, have you not lost your fucking mind?
You won everything. You won everything.
He's like he's one of the greatest managers in, like, the reason why you haven't won probably at least 3 Premier League titles is because you come up against Manchester City.
Exactly.
You know, they got 97 points in a season, lost 1 game, and didn't win the Premier League. You know, like, come on, lads. Like, you got to see that what you've achieved in this footballing sense is miraculous. And this is the kind of the what I was moaning about most of all after the game. I was just like, it's just unfair. You know, it's it like, Harry Kane doesn't get the happy ending, really. Tottenham don't get the happy. It just, because I was thinking in that, you know what I was saying is, if they went 2-0 up, right? We were talking about Kane breaking Greaves' record in that game.
Yeah.
2 goals. That's the happy. Like, if we'd have won 2-0, 2 Harry Kane goals, great. That's lovely. That's brilliant. That's golden scenario. But when we're 2-0 down, I'm thinking, all right, okay. At least let's have the knockdown version. At least he gets 2 now, makes it 2-2. Great, nice. They haven't beaten us at White Hart Lane, and Harry Kane's broken Jimmy Greaves' record.
Yeah, I'd have taken that all day.
Yeah, but
just 2-0 down.
Even the sort of knockdown version, it just doesn't happen for Tottenham, does it?
No, you just know it's not going to happen. I mean, I listened to your podcast from after the game. That's the bit for me every time. It's that it never falls for us. I remember watching the Sunderland Till I Die documentary, and there's that clip where, I can't remember, I think it's one of the playoff finals or something that we were in, and there's like the Sunderland fan, and she just says, like, she's watching the other team celebrate after minutes, why is it never us? And I was like, that is spot on. That is exactly how I feel as a Tottenham fan. Always sitting in the other end watching the team. Why is that never us?
It's I tell you, because the Champions League, that obviously was, you know, really hard to stomach. But I tell you, when it really got me was not even seeing them win the Premier League. When Leicester won the FA Cup, was it last year or the year before? I just remember seeing them all, like, I think they beat Chelsea in the final, and they're all just celebrating on the pitch. And I was thinking, like, you know what? People, like, it would be great to win the Premier League, and they've obviously already done that. Great to win the Champions League, but even just something like that, the FA Cup, because it's massive, you know? And seeing all of them kind of celebrating and enjoying it, I'm just thinking, like, it's been a fucking long time since we've seen that at Tottenham. And, you know, when you think about Harry Kane, he's one of the greatest footballers ever. Definitely one of the greatest Tottenham players ever, if not the greatest. And there's every chance he's going to leave this summer now, if you see everything that's going around on Twitter today. And he's not going to have won a single thing for us. And it's
yeah,
mad.
it's just unreal. It's some of that. It's like it's that timing. The fact that it's only Tottenham could be the best team over 2 seasons and still not win the Premier League. Like, only we would peak just as we've literally turned White Hart Lane into a fortress, unbeaten for the entire season. Soz guys, knocking it down, you've got to move out.
Yeah.
It's just, it's always that, isn't it? It's lasagna. It's the, changing the rules so that if someone wins the Champions League and finishes outside the top 4, they nick the 4th spot. Then, once that's happened, we'll change it again so that won't happen. So it does feel a little bit like somebody somewhere has done something to anger the football gods. I don't know whether like George Graham left something like under the foundations, or like, I don't know, Archway Steel was a secret like Indian burial ground or something. I don't know. It just feels like we've done something to upset someone, and we just, so much of football it isn't just about, what money you spend and the philosophy you play. You need the luck as well, and that's the bit we never seem to get. It's the luck.
It's funny, isn't it? It's just I saw somebody was saying earlier, it's almost like everything since Ajax we've just been paying a penance for having such a great moment.
Yeah.
That we just upset the footballing gods in that one moment, so unlike Tottenham to do what we did that night, that we've just been paying the price ever since, because it's I do sort of try and catch myself, and I think, God, I sound like this sort of moany kind of like poor me, but it's like in the footballing sense, as we sort of spell out there, it's hard to see it any other way, right? That we don't just sometimes, it just falls our way, right? Even in one of these League Cup finals we've made, just not even just getting that over the line. And I'm not that arsed about that competition, but still, it would be good to just see us win something.
It's a trophy, isn't it? It's like, as much as I don't want to bring Mourinho into it, that is why he always used to say, go for the League Cup. It is that first mental step of, we got over the line and we won something. Like, it gets that monkey off your back of, you've never done it in a final. And, unfortunately, Man City seem to basically own that competition for the last decade, although they seem to have given up on that now.
But I've given up on the Premier League as well, if you listen to what Pep's got to say about it.
It's
funny that one year, isn't it, when his protege
Exactly. It's just sickening.
But it is, though, isn't it? Because it's so like, my apprentice has won the... Well, I guess I must have done something right. It's got such a shade of that about it. Like,
exactly. It just brings back the feelings of like that. Again, lasagna last day, all the FA people at Highbury being like winded. You just feel like, it's just conspiring against us again. And I mean, you're a bigger person than me to say, fair enough to us. I just hate it. Hate seeing them do well. I won't give them any credit ever, just because I am that unreasonable about Arsenal.
But it's the right way to be. Yeah,
it is. I don't care. I know they're good. I've seen it, but I don't want to think about it. And they're still, they are still the original franchise club, and they also never won their position in the top league anyway. So really, every Premier League they've won should be taken off, and they should really be relegated and forced to actually earn their place in the league before they're allowed to compete in it.
If they're about to win it last day of the season this year, actually. But this is, do you know what though? What you say there though, because I do have this slightly tinfoil hat thing about like these establishment clubs, as I call them, namely Liverpool, United, Arsenal. Like it's those three, and I think like Chelsea sort of knock on the door on it a bit, but they're still a kind of upstart, new money type thing. And same with City. I mean, City have never really been accepted into it, even though they keep dominating everything. They're still kind of seen as like a small club, which is weird, in the eyes of many people. And I get it. I sort of still see them that way a bit. I remember once one of the kind of interns at one of my old jobs, when I was this was a few years back, 4 or 5 years ago now. He was about sort of 17, 18 at the time, and I was going on about Man City, just being like, nah, they're just shit club kind of thing. And he was like, how can you say that? They're one of the best teams in the country. I was like, all right, Alex, mate, let me put it this way to you. Like, if you saw, let's say, Stoke or Wolves now, if I told you Stoke or Wolves, your experience of them to this point in 5-10 years, imagine if you're in your mid-20s, pushing 30, Stoke Wolves people younger than you will be saying they're one of the best teams in the country because they spent a load of money and won loads of stuff. You still wouldn't accept them as that, would you? I'm digressing here.
But I wonder if that's though why you like to say you feel about those three teams, because I'm guessing that I'm assuming you are similar age to me, mid late 30s. We've those are the three teams that we grew up with dominating everything. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you, but when I was at school, everybody supported either Man U, Liverpool, or Arsenal, and I was one of about three Tottenham fans. I think so. And all the pundits and everything now. I guess it's that timing, isn't it? They were the dominant clubs, so now.
Well, this is it, and in terms of this, like, what riles me about, like, when I look at this North London derby and I look at kind of just all of the conversation around it, like the palpable sort of excitement in the media in general, neutrals and Arsenal media aside. Obviously, Arsenal media, that's a stupid point because they're going to be excited about what Arsenal do. But the neutrals, Carragher saying it, Neville saying it, I hope Arsenal win the league. They're going big on it now, and you see, I saw some thread from some like Liverpool kind of tactics guy fawning over them, just being like, it's good for the game, it's good, good old Arsenal, this sort of thing.
Oh, just fuck off!
But for years, when we were doing it on the shoestring, it was Bottleham Hotspur and all this type of stuff.
Oh yeah, it used to be the same thing when Wenger used to play the kids. Everyone used to wank themselves silly over it. It was isn't it wonderful, Wenger and the kids? And then when we used to do that, same thing. It's like, oh well, you don't spend the money on buying the proper players. It's like two completely different narratives. Two clubs do the same thing, and it's a totally different. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at it from the Tottenham point of view, so I might just be ridiculously biased, but that is how it feels. It feels like we don't get much credit from. There's not much love for us in the media. They seem to quite enjoy watching us fuck up.
Well, I think cause it's mad considering when you actually really think about that 16-17 season, 86 points, unbeaten at home in an entire season.
Yeah,
it's barely spoken about at all.
Yeah.
The fact that we came second to Antonio Conte's, ironically enough, like monstrous Chelsea team who I think they finished on about 92 points, which at that point was before Man City were regularly getting. Yeah, it was before the Centurions. It was one of the highest ever points tallies ever,
and we beat them as well.
Yeah, and it's still just kind of looked back on as Tottenham bottled everything. Well, I don't know, man. There's a lot of like I say, there's a lot of things at play right now. There's a lot of feelings with regard to Tottenham. So I do sort of want to try and break it down because, like we said, we're looking at Arsenal. We're looking at this kind of like progressive team, smart signings, us going after Trossard or Adama Traore and these type of players now. There's talk yesterday that Daniel Levy's already thinking about, or that we've had preliminary conversations with Thomas Tuchel, and you're like, have we not, like, what is actually going on here? Like, if we've got Antonio Conte in charge, whether you like him or not, like, and I'm not the biggest fan of his, but at the same time, I don't really want the upheaval of him getting sacked. I would honestly, I would rather see, if I had to say, I would like to see him from this point sign a contract, say that he is right, I'm bought in. I'll give you 3 years of my life, and I will make you because this is what I've never felt from him. If he came out, beating his chest, saying, I will make this team successful, I will drag them up. I will drag them up to the top of the table, and I will make them successful, and I will do everything. I will work day and night to make this team a success.
Yeah, you couldn't not buy into that, could you?
No,
but
exactly.
You're right, we're not getting that from him.
And we're not getting that from him. So But now we're in this position where we obviously don't really want to spend much money in January. Fair enough. Yes and no, because we clearly have a lot of defensive deficiencies. But my question is, like, if the board are in a place where they feel they can't trust this manager, they don't want to back him, what are we all doing here? What's going on? You know?
It feels like we're just wasting the next 6 months, doesn't it? It is that exactly. If they don't feel it's right, then now's the time to act and move on, because otherwise it's another 6 months wasted. Another, he's already got a mishmash of 3-4 different managers' players there, and it needs to be somebody with a vision. And again, if he's got that vision and he's bought into it, that's one thing, but he's not committing. And that's got to be rubbing off on the players. You know, if you're a Harry Kane or whatever, you've got to be thinking, what the hell's happening here? Like, because it feels awful, because I don't obviously I don't want Kane to leave. I think he's irreplaceable. It doesn't matter if someone gives us 300 million for him in the summer. We're not going to replace him.
It's priceless.
It's not possible to replace Harry Kane.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what we get for him. But I kind of understand why he did the initial flirting with City. But I think in an ideal world, I think Kane actually he would like to be able to stay with Tottenham and be that one club man and be the Alan Shearer, have a statue outside. But you've also got to think for a player of his talent, he's got to know where the club's going. And he's got to feel that commitment that we're going to... He's now hasn't got the time to be wasting. It was different 5 years ago. But, if he's only got, say, 4 or 5 years left or whatever, he's going to have to make a decision now. So we need to... It just feels like there's a lot of vagueness around the club. And you just want somebody to come out and say, this is our plan, this is our vision, this is what we're going for. And we don't get that. We just get these sort of same old sound bites. And hearing the players come out every game and go, yeah, I think we did all right. Sorry, what? Like, I don't understand.
Because this is my question now. Because I've always been somewhat. I've never really been Olympic Stadium. I was pretty vociferously anti kind of ENIC and Daniel Levy and all that. Their plans to basically take us out of N17, but they've gone back on that. Fair enough. I think there's been times when they've probably dropped the ball, but I guess we can look at it in retrospect. We were pissed off at the time that we didn't back Pochettino, but I still think there was that we were building something. We were literally building the stadium. I think the majority of fans, even a lot of people who don't like Daniel Levy, I think the majority of people were like, they could at least understand, all right, we're pumping a lot of money into building a ground. We can probably understand why there aren't going to be any signings, if we like it or not. And I do think that his stewardship of the club, because if you post anything sort of remotely kind of positive, not even it doesn't even have to be positive about Levy, it just has to be not negative about him. And, you're called deluded and you're called all these types of things. If I'm being brutally honest, he's taken us from being, like you say, we're a similar age. Tottenham were awful. We were just a nothing, and we were a nothing-y Premier League mid-table team that had history. That's all that we were. Yeah. But Nottingham Forest had history. Aston Villa had history. Everton had history.
Absolutely. That's our level, let's be honest.
Yeah. That's where we were at. But I would say over the majority of his stewardship now, he's turned us into a contender. We are now a super club. We just are. We don't have to listen to what Arsenal fans, United fans, or anything say. We are a super club. That stadium is massive. We play Champions League football. Our brand, the awareness of the football club is global now. Yeah. We have a huge fan base. He has built that, and I'll give him credit for that. I'm starting to get to the point now, though, where I feel really, now we're actually at this level, I'm starting to feel like he's a bit out of his depth.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I feel like he was the perfect guy to come in and do what he's done, which was, he's looked at the club and, like you just said about, Everton, Villa. Actually, this is what I always say to people, is part of the Tottenham Hotspur crappy narrative that comes out is that people are comparing us to Liverpool, to, as much as I like to say it, Arsenal, United. When they're not the like for like level you should be comparing us with. If you want to see if Spurs have succeeded in any way, look at Everton, Villa. Though that's the level. Newcastle even, obviously, world's changing with that now. But look at what they've done in the last however many years. How many of no development of their infrastructure, stadium, any of that stuff. Actually, you've got to remember as well, when Daniel Levy came in 2001 with this vision of how can I make Spurs compete commercially with, at that time, it was all Man U and Arsenal. Man U's brand, absolutely massive. Liverpool's still massive brand based off being dominant in the 80s. All that money coming from those international fan bases that we didn't have, he saw straight away we needed that, we need the stadium, we need that infrastructure to enable us to compete. In 2001, Roman Abramovich hadn't even started looking at football clubs. So, he's come up with that strategy. He's then had Chelsea come in and basically win the lottery. We then start knocking on the door of Champions League in sort of late 2000s, and then Man City win the bloody lottery. And then now you've got flipping Newcastle doing it as well. So, I mean, when people say about doing it the right way, I mean, he has grown the club organically. He hasn't done it with a, just pump a load of oil money in. So when you look at that versus your Evertons, your Villas or whatever, you have to say he's done a fucking brilliant job. But you're right, that, for these 20 years, that excuse has been there. Well, we've got to wait for the stadium. We've got to wait for this. We've got to wait for that. Well, that's all done now, Daniel. And the whole purpose of this, surely, was to be able to elevate us as a football club. I don't mind you having concerts, having NFL games. I think think he was quite creative in thinking about the NFL
smart,
thing.
Isn't it, right? I don't know why people get so rattled by it. It's clever,
I don't. I really don't.
It makes
give
decent
a
money
shit.
for the club.
Yeah, as long as that money is put back into the football team. I don't want to see it going into Edic's pockets. We're not here to be an event company. As long as that, I don't mind how we make our money out of the stadium, but the priority has got to be putting that money back into the football team. And I think that's what we're not seeing, and it doesn't feel like there's a clear strategy. And he's brought in Paratici, and then surely the whole philosophy was meant to be then that Levy was going to step back from the football side, but then there's obviously still signs that he's meddling in it with the, Spence being signed and the farting about that still seems to go on with transfers and stuff. I can't work out what he's trying to do, but you're right, he's a fantastic businessman. But when it comes to the football side of things, he just seems to continuously get it wrong. And he got very, very lucky with Pochettino. Very lucky.
See, because this is where I come back to now. Because I've been trying to sort of consolidate everything that I'm feeling after that derby. And like I say, there's part of it just the pure base level fact that Arsenal are, let's be honest, more than likely to win the Premier League now.
Yep.
They've beaten us at our ground en route to doing that. They've actually, as I was saying, been shitter than us in the past few years, and not only come back to being better than us, come back to being so much better than us that they're just going to come back and win the Premier League again. That it's just, we're talking about football gods and football hating Tottenham, like fucking hell, Like,
that is a proper kick in the nuts, isn't it?
Fucking hell. Especially after we've been going on about Pochettino and how exciting it was and how are we supposed to compete against, City and Chelsea and all this, and then they just go and do it, doing exactly pretty much what we did with Pochettino, other than the final bit, which is giving him a load of money to get it over the line.
But that's where the luck thing comes in again.
Yeah.
Let's be, again,
timing and
Chelsea have dropped off, City have dropped off. This stupid World Cup in the middle of the season I knew it was going to benefit some clubs and it was going to screw some others. And I think it has. It's not the only reason, but I do think it's had a detrimental effect on us and on City. It's no coincidence that our two clubs are the ones that had the most minutes played out of all teams from our players at that World Cup, and have come back not quite looking. I mean, we weren't looking great before, let's be honest. So maybe not so much with us, but definitely with City. It's just, and it's coincided with that sweet spot where Man U aren't quite there yet. Newcastle getting better, but the money hasn't really kicked in yet. Chelsea in some sort of turmoil. But it just seems, again, the stars have aligned for them in the same way that they seemed to for Leicester in that one season. And yeah, it just hasn't happened that way for us, has it?
No, and this is where I'm at now, because we talk about, like, there's a part of me that I just, I look at kind of the players, how they're performing or not performing under Conte. Are they bought into it? Are they not? Blah, 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 blah. All the stuff we've kind of been going on about. And I'm like, okay, so what does it look like, right? We get rid of Conte, and if we have the sort of the dream scenario, which is what I want, is to find that, a lot of people say, like, Marcelo Gallardo, who managed River Plate, who's done wonderful things there, won like the South American Champions League, won the league with River Plate. real kind of up and coming progressive kind of manager. Although I think he is a bit older, he hasn't managed in Europe or anything like that. I think he's about Poch's age now. I guess Poch is a relatively still young manager now, but so there's talk about bringing somebody like him in, right? So Conte goes, we bring someone like him in. We've got next season, we spend half the season kind of going again, right? Kane probably leaves in summer. We know this. I think Kane is good. I think this is the uncomfortable thing. I don't really want to go on about it too much. We've seen today, apparently, like Paul O'Keefe, everybody knows him on Spurs Twitter, pretty well connected bloke, has, but essentially said that Kane isn't interested in extending his contract at Tottenham. So we can accept it, even, whatever the circumstances. If we were getting a new project manager in, it would probably mean that Kane goes, because we're looking at a 3-4 year roadmap, right? He goes, maybe we even sell Son, or we keep him as an elder statesman in the squad, bench player rotation, whatever. Lloris goes, and we build a new team. We build it around Kulusevski, around Richarlison. We start to implement Spence. We have Sarr in there. We've got Destiny coming in next year. We had a new goalkeeper. We had a couple of new centre backs, or even just a centre back to go alongside Romero. And you can start to see the sort of green shoots of hope again. But my problem is, right, and this is where I'm at this crossroads now with the board or with Conte or with whoever, is the reason why, because that excites me on a certain level. It will excite me to see Tottenham playing decent football again. It will excite me to see Tottenham playing young players. But what happens when we get to that point again, when, as we were with Pochettino, or as we were with Redknapp for a while, or, that we build to this point, we've got this exciting project, we need to add 2 or 3 new players, and it just doesn't happen because in the eyes of the board, we've got Kulusevski and we've got Richarlison, so we should just be able to make do because they've gotten us close to that point. Do you know what I mean? It's like it feels like we're going down this same kind of road again. Like after Yol went, we brought in one day Ramos, this kind of guy that had won the UEFA Cup and stuff with Sevilla. He was supposed to be the guy to get it over the line. It fell to pieces. Brought Harry Redknapp in, and this, do you know what I mean? This sort of cycle is just going to go on and on and on. And the latest one we're hearing at the moment is Thomas Tuchel, which wouldn't you just give up? Like, what?
It's like, why can we only recruit managers who Chelsea have just sacked? There's got to be more out there. I mean, if it came down to Tuchel or Pochettino, I'd rather have Pochettino back. At least he's got a connection with the club and. I don't know. It just feels like it is a little bit of a where do we go from here? I don't know what the answer is, but you're right. It's that I'd just like to know from the board do you actually give a shit about us winning something? Or are you genuinely happy to tread water and be like, oh, well, we made the top 4, we've got the money in. Do you genuinely want to actually see us win some silverware?
Well, because that's funny, because you always hear that, he doesn't always get it right, but Daniel Levy, he really does, he really does want to see Tottenham win something. He really does. And I've always sort of extended him the benefit of the doubt. Like I say, I've not really ever been, viscerally, anti-Daniel Levy or anything like that. No. I see that he's not flawless, but at the same time, I think, a lot of people don't realise, kind of like as we were saying, the job he has done. But this point you touch on, though, I do start to question increasingly, is he actually that desperate to see Tottenham win something? Really? Because even under I just he brought in Jose Mourinho, right? We lost the best manager we've had. I won't say ever had because of Bill Nicholson and all that, but I'll say in living memory, the best manager we've ever had. And that was horrible. It was horrible letting him go, but I think everybody realised, everybody came to the point where it was whatever, he's not going to get the players to refresh the squad, and it's all just, it crumbled basically. It seemed to be
broken, wasn't it?
Exactly. And so he went, we brought in Mourinho, but I don't get why did he do that and then again not really back him seemingly,
and then sack him the week before a cup final.
I'm struggling now. I think this is the biggest thing. I'm struggling to see the vision. I'm struggling to see what the club are trying to be and trying to do. you know?
Yeah, when the stadium was being built, that was almost the vision that you could say, look, well, we're building something. There was something that's visible there, a physical thing. We are building something. But since that's been done, and obviously I know COVID will have put a big spanner in probably all of this, because, you know, who could have foreseen, you know, Daniel's thinking, I'm building this massive stadium in London. No way this isn't going to make money. Oh, London's shut for 2 years. So that won't have helped. But it is, yeah, that clarity of, okay, there's been all this talk all this time that the stadium's what we need to be able to compete. But how? What is your strategy to do that? There just doesn't, there doesn't seem to be a clearly laid out strategy. I mean, I don't know if other clubs have a strategy. In fairness, it's not like I pay attention to them. So are we asking for something that, you know, no club offers? But yeah, it just all feels a little bit cloak and dagger sometimes. What really is the end game here? Is it just making money for ENIC, or is it Tottenham Hotspur Football Club?
You know, it's just stumped at this point, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is one of those things, right? All of this stuff is exacerbated. I think it's massively exacerbated. I don't even always think it's just by results. I honestly don't.
No.
I think the biggest thing that brings fan bases to this point generally is just when the football's not fun. When you're not and I can honestly say, for like 3 or 4 years now, I have just not enjoyed watching Tottenham play. You know,
it's boring, isn't it?
Like actually watching them play football is, yeah, right. The whole theatre around it, seeing your mates and all that type of stuff, and the narratives that come out of football. But we don't play football that's nice on the eye. You know, we don't. We've had it in little window. We had a tiny window of it at the end of last season. But where's that gone? Like, how did that just fall off as badly as it has done? It's just, and we, you know, there is that stuff about the World Cup and things. I do take that to a point. We are one of the sort of, you know, we were one of the teams that had the most sort of playtime out there. And I guess I think there's probably one thing I am neglecting is that we have, you know, had the death of our fitness coach, Ventroni, you know, a friend of Antonio Conte, that's happened in the middle of the season. So how much that plays a part or not, we don't know. But it's not like we hadn't played this way kind of previously under Conte as well. That's the only thing I'd say against it. So I don't really know where to look, and I don't know how this goes. But the one thing I can say is that what can happen is, if we end this season like we ended last season, if we suddenly actually start to get it together, form kind of comes into a decent place, we get Bentancur back, Kulusevski gets up to full fitness, we start knocking the ball about again quite nicely, winning games, a lot of this sort of noise and a lot of these feelings will disappear again for a while, won't they? And that's just how football happens, isn't it? So I guess when you are in that hole, you need to just kind of realise that, but it will hopefully pass, and just try not to think too much about the bigger stuff at play, because really we don't have any control over that. People can say protest and do this, but we can protest, great, we can make it uncomfortable for the board, but ultimately that doesn't make somebody with £3 billion turn up and say, okay, Tottenham, I'll buy you because some people are protesting. And that's the harsh reality of it, right?
Exactly. Look at Newcastle and Mike Ashley. They tried for years to get him out, and they'll go when they're ready to go. It's not going to be us shouting at them, unfortunately, that's going to make the difference there, really, is it? If they're getting what they want out of it. And that's the horrible thing about football now, I suppose, isn't it? Is that our clubs aren't really our own now. But, you know, there are definitely worse owners we could have had. At least they have left, you know, they've left a legacy for Tottenham, no matter what, you know, whatever happens with ENIC, you know, they have done something for this club. It's just now, for me, it is that crossroads of, okay, guys, are you now the ones who want to take advantage of what you've created and put that into practice on the football pitch, or not? And if not, then, like Levy always says, they're just the custodians of the club. It's time to hand the custody over to someone else. But Who? I don't know, and I don't want to be owned by a blimmin' Qatari conglomerate or something. So, but
I guess this is the point when we sort of see that there are no, as people make this point, there are no ethical billionaires. You know? And whether that's a comment on the sport in general, I mean, it definitely is. Like, look at the World Cup we've just had and everything. It raises a lot of these questions, doesn't it, as to what do you get from football, what do you want from football? And I do, you know, as I was saying with the Liverpool fans earlier, maybe part of the problem, because the funny thing is, Lara, right, when we were growing up and Tottenham were a lot worse than they are, I still don't remember being as like miserable about it as I am just seeing Tottenham now. It was a laugh.
I used to be proper like excited about going to watch us and like, oh well, never mind, we might lose. But yeah, now I think that there's a bit of that, isn't it? That it's the more successful you get, it brings that into it. It's almost like back there was nothing to lose. Every game was exciting because you were always playing, most of the time you were playing someone who was better than you.
We're through the looking glass, isn't it? That's the
exactly.
That's the
and unfortunately, I think with Spurs it is that thing of, because we haven't got over the line, and we've had our cycle where we have been good, and you know, Arsenal was shite and we were really good, and the only difference is we just didn't get over the line in any of. And you look at the number of semi-finals we were in, both of those league campaigns, you think had 2 or 3 things gone very slightly differently, we'd have taken something home and it would have been different. But I think it's that frustration of having got so close, and now we know we're on that downward spiral again, we've got to rebuild, but it's not even like we've got the memories of looking back on on the trophy and that kind of thing. And I suppose there is a bit of a weird thing, I think, in the fact that we are those, us and Everton, I suppose it is just now really, who've been, we're ever present in the Premier League. We're not at risk of getting relegated. We don't actually think some of those lower league clubs, or some of the sort of ones that get in the relegation battle, you at least have that excitement of, you might have a shit season and go down, but then you come back up and you have your day out where you get to lift the league title or win the playoff final or whatever. You don't, and this sounds like awful spoiled Premier League fan whinging, but it's that being stuck in the middle where you never get that. Even when you have the shit bit, you don't then get the bit of it coming back up again. You don't ever get that day without actually winning something. And it feels like every time we get close as well, somebody else gets taken over by an oil billionaire. And it'll be Newcastle, won't it, that we're, that's pipping us to the post for things.
I mean, unless something drastic happens, they're going to get Champions League football this season, I mean, that's happening way faster than anyone thought. So if they're already moving towards that, that's another one of those places taken up, isn't it? And to be fair, you've got to say that when you look at the grand scheme of things, I know Leicester are a bit of an outlier. I think that, the fact we've been up there in the mix of all of these clubs all this time without ever having that massive investment, really, it is something. But when people look at it from the outside, exactly, and people look at that from the outside, they'll say, yeah, but what have you won though? And it's like, yeah, but you've also got to remember where we came from. So for us, this is better. But yeah, I just think it is that thing where you look at some of the other clubs that have won FA Cups and things like that. We will win something again at some point. It can't, it just can't be the case that Spurs never win anything again. One day it will happen, but it just feels like a lot of things have conspired against us over a long time. And I think it is that piece where if we had a different manager, who was committed to the club, you'd have a bit more hope. But at the moment, it feels a bit like we're in limbo waiting. And so you've got nothing to focus on other than the being pissed off that it's all gone wrong. Champions League this season, though, Lara, maybe?
That's true. I said that is the only thing that can make this better.
Harry Kane's
we win the
last
Champions
season.
League. Yeah,
imagine it.
That's it. Perfect.
I mean, I don't want to manifest this Harry Kane's last season thing, like I'm saying, but it does feel that way a bit. But,
Yeah. I think it's beating Greaves' record, to be fair, that has kept him here. Being so close to it, I think, is that thing where he can see that he's going to get over the line with that. But I think once he's beaten that, for me, there's nothing to keep him here if we're not showing real intent that we're going to do something. Once he is, no one's ever going to beat that record. unless another generation of
Much
talent
Dane
comes
Scarlett
through.
comes back and just does
Exactly.
it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Dane Scarlett, 2032 or whatever. But yeah, I think for me that's the thing. Once he's reached that target, that's when I think he's going to start looking elsewhere. But yeah, like you said, that's the only thing that can make things better for me. We just have to win the Champions League, so nice and easy, no problem.
Nice and easy job done, eh?
Yeah. Then they can shove their Premier League up their arse, can't they?